Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. The alligator gar. The alligator gar is by far the largest species of freshwater gar in the world. Despite its name, the alligator gar is not a reptile, but a fish. They look like animals that you'd find swimming alongside dinosaurs millions of years ago. They have long and slender bodies, long snouts for snatching prey, and mesmerizing diamond scales. But the truly impressive part about the alligator gar is that it can grow to be roughly 8 feet long and weigh over 300 pounds. Adults have double rows of teeth for ripping and tearing, and they can live for several decades. In Mississippi in 2011, the largest alligator gar in history was captured. It weighed 327 pounds and was believed to be around 95 years old. That is an extremely old fish, and perhaps the oldest alligator gar to ever live in the Mississippi River. These impressive creatures can be found all the way from Ohio to Mexico, but are most frequently caught in Texas. In 2022, a Texan angler named Peyton Moore caught the biggest fish of his life in a river outside Houston. Peyton said it was like wrestling in the mud with a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but it was an alligator gar, one that measured 8 feet 2 inches long and weighed 300 pounds. While it didn't break any official records, it was still a gargantuan fish, and one with such a powerful set of jaws that if the angler hadn't been careful, it just might have bitten one of his legs off. Number 9. The Piraruku. The Piraruku is an Amazonian fish not too many people have heard of before. It has juicy, tender white flesh. It can grow to be over 9 feet long, and it's one of the biggest river monsters in the world. It was once hunted to the brink of extinction, but has since made a triumphant return and is now considered a delicacy. People in the fanciest restaurants of Rio de Janeiro pay a fortune to eat just a few slivers of this fish's yummy meat. According to Frederick Monnier from the Brasserie Rosario restaurant, it was the indigenous communities in the Amazon who stepped in to ensure the survival of what is one of the biggest fish the jungle has ever seen. The Piraruku went from a population of 2,500 in 1999 to over 190,000 in 2018. So, how big can this prized fish get? The biggest Piraruku can weigh 485 pounds. That's really huge, especially seeing as the fish lives primarily in rivers, and it is a ferocious carnivore. It belongs to a unique group of primitive bony-tongued fishes called Osteoglossidae, and you'll never believe how it hunts. It doesn't use teeth to bite its victims, but rather crushes them with its tooth-studded tongue. The tongue of the Piraruku is such an effective weapon that the Amazonian tribes use it as a seed grater, kind of like a natural cheese grater. Another thing that makes the Piraruku such a unique river monster is that it can breathe fresh air. It has a specialized air bladder that allows it to breathe just like we do, and it purposely finds waters low in oxygen so that it can feed on oxygen-deprived fish. Number 8. The White River Monster. There is said to be a very curious creature lurking in the White River outside of Newport in Arkansas. It's such a popular legend that the Arkansas state legislature went so far as to create a refuge for the mysterious beast adjacent to the Jacksonport State Park. The legislature also made it illegal to kill or otherwise harm the White River Monster. The locals simply call him Whitey, and he's been sighted for over 150 years in the area. It was the Kuopah Indians who first told each other stories of the mysterious serpent in the lake, passing the tales down from generation to generation. We don't know how old the story is, since it was carried through the ages by word of mouth. The Native Americans used to tell stories of being attacked by the White River Monster and having their canoes flipped over. Then, during the Civil War, there were rumors that the White River Monster had joined up with the Union and started attacking Confederate ships. At least one sinking of a Confederate gunship has been attributed to the monster. As the years went on, more and more people reportedly witnessed the monster in the lake. A farmer by the name of Bramlelt Bateman reported seeing it multiple times in 1937. 3 fishermen on the river witnessed it in 1966 and described the creature as having a tail like a mermaid. They also said it had a monkey's head and arms like flippers. In 1971, two men reportedly saw tracks in the muddy riverbanks of some kind of three-toed creature they'd never seen before. Some have described the monster as a giant snake. Some say it has a spiny backbone like a Spinosaurus, and it's estimated to be about 30 feet long. Number 7. The marbled eel. The giant mottled eel is also called the marbled eel, and it's considered to be a terrifying river monster. It's the largest species of anguillid eel with a total length of up to 6.6 feet, and while it only grows to be 45 pounds, that's still pretty big for an eel. Just imagine a slippery, serpent-like creature with fangs that's longer than you and weighs as much as a small child. To make the creature even more mysterious and terrifying, it supposedly eats people. Multiple disappearances have been reported on the Pacific island of Fiji, where people were vanishing on the island's remote interior. One of these supposed victims disappeared near a freshwater river behind a dam, then was later discovered dead with circular wounds all over their body. Some said it could have been an octopus, although that would have been strange since octopuses typically don't travel into fresh water. Instead, locals believed it was a gigantic eel living around the dam that attacked and killed the person. It's also not that hard to believe, seeing as eels are known for their unique death roll attack. This is when they bite hold of something and spin rapidly, disorienting their prey and drowning them. And on that note, it's shout-out time! Wanted to say a big thank you to Sarah Booth and the Sausage Continuum. Thanks so much for watching! If you are new here, welcome, and be sure to subscribe to join the Origins Explained family. Number 6. The Japanese Giant Salamander. The Japanese giant salamander is the second biggest salamander in the world, but it's not like any kind of salamander you've ever seen at home. This thing is just shy of being a real-life dragon. It's a huge amphibian which lives in the streams and rivers of Japan, preferably in fast-flowing systems, and is currently under the threat of extinction. The Japanese giant salamander can grow over 5 feet long and weigh over 55 pounds. It really does look like a prehistoric creature left behind from the days of the dinosaurs. Even its skin, a dark mottled pattern of gray and brown, looks like the skin of a dinosaur. But at the end of the day, the giant salamander looks almost identical to the North American salamanders. The real difference is that it's huge. Oh, and also dangerous. When the giant salamander feels threatened, it will secrete a sticky white substance, kind of like mucus, that scientists say could be toxic to predators. This secretion stinks like Japanese peppers and is so bad it can make you nauseous. Like other salamanders, the giant Japanese variety are miracles of nature. They can regrow both skin and bone, boasting some of the best and most coveted regenerative capabilities of any animal that's ever lived. Number 5. The large-toothed sawfish. The large-toothed sawfish is a nightmare like you won't believe. It was once prosperous all around the globe, but is now primarily found near the Gulf of Mexico and down the Atlantic coast to South America. It can also be found in the Caribbean. Large-toothed sawfish are unique in that they are usually born in freshwater rivers, then migrate into relatively salty waters where it's tropical and warm. For this reason, large-toothed sawfish can be found hanging out in estuaries, rivers, and even salty coastlines. But what exactly makes the large-toothed sawfish so terrifying? The answer is something called a rostrum. This is the part of the fish that gives it its name. It has a snout protruding from its face that looks like a bleached chainsaw. Attached to it are 14 to 24 large rostral teeth. The rostrum itself makes up for over a quarter of the fish's length, which is approximately 20 feet long, so the snout is about 5 feet long. The rostrum, although it may look like a weapon, which it is more of a sensing rod. It's used to give the fish a sixth sense, allowing it to detect electric fields. It's like if your nose could detect the subtle presence of electricity given off by nearby life forms. There are thousands of tiny organs on the rostrum that pick up the presence of any nearby living organism. And then, of course, there's its use as a weapon. It is a major killing tool. The fish can move it back and forth just like a real chainsaw to stun its victim, then dismember it. And if the fish happens to get into a situation with a crocodile or a shark, it will use its nose chainsaw to cut and dismember where necessary. Number 4. The Mini Washitu. The Mini Washitu is a legend from the Missouri River. The beast originated in tales told by the Dakota Nation. They spoke of a mysterious creature that lived at the bottom of the Missouri River and was very rarely seen by humans. But whenever somebody did see it, the thing was so dreadful it would give them nightmares for the rest of their lives. It would also cause the witness to go completely insane and be thrown into such a fit of madness that the only cure was often death. What's really fascinating about the Mini Washitu is that if the legends are to be believed, it doesn't look like any other sea creature. The Native Americans described it as being covered with hair like a buffalo, as red as freshly spilled blood, and having one eye in the center of its forehead like a cyclops. It also had a single horn like a rhinoceros and a backbone like a big bladed saw. It's so horribly ugly that you can die just by looking at it. And supposedly, the Mini Washitu becomes active in the Missouri River every spring. Number 3. The Monongahila River Monsters. The Monongahila River begins near the city of Pittsburgh and stretches for 200 miles to the south, way down to the remotest depths of the Appalachian Mountains. Its branches and tributaries delve into forests so old that some have rarely ever been seen by human eyes. Because of its remoteness and isolation in one of the most mysterious regions of America, it is no surprise that there are plenty of supposed monsters living in its waters. According to historian Glenn Lowe, the indigenous people of Appalachia were the first to come up with stories of monsters in the river. And then, when the first immigrants arrived in cities like Fairmont and Morgantown, they began telling stories of their own. One of these monsters is called the Ogua. It first appears in written testimonies in the 1700s. A young man stationed at Fort Harmar in Ohio wrote a letter to his parents in Connecticut about a strange creature which he said stayed in the water during the daytime, but at night crawls out in search of food, which is usually deer. The creature was said to have a tail 15 feet long, 2 heads, a shell like a turtle, and a hunger for blood. Nobody really knows if the Ogua ever existed, or really what kind of monsters are hiding deep in the waterways of Appalachia. Number 2. The St. John's River Monster. In Florida's St. John River, there is supposedly a terrifying monster. Its nickname is Johnny, and its story goes back to 1849. The captain of a schooner was shocked when he and his crew witnessed an immense sea serpent lift its head out of the water and show the top of its gigantic slimy body. It had fins several feet long, and the captain estimated it to be roughly 90 feet long. When the captain asked the local citizens of Jacksonville what they thought about his story, they weren't even surprised. Many people claimed to have already seen the beast, and it was just kind of an accepted fact that there was a prehistoric dinosaur living in the St. John's River. Although, keep in mind, this was around the same time that the English had just set up their own bureau to investigate the Loch Ness Monster. The 19th century was a time of speculation and mass hysteria over all kinds of cryptid beasts. About a century later, the Orlando Sentinel reported in October of 1953 that the St. John's River Monster had been seen again. A man named Owen Godwin had promised to pay $5,000 to anyone who could catch it alive. Rumor at the time was that the monster had a horn like a narwhal and was 30 feet long. It had been witnessed by nearly a dozen people. But alas, nobody ever captured the monster, and nobody was ever awarded the $5,000. Some believe it was just an anaconda living in the river, but the mystery has never been solved. Number 1. The Freshwater Stingray. The Freshwater Stingray is yet another horrifying monster that lives in the Amazon River. It's one of the only rays in the world that lives in freshwater instead of saltwater, and it's honestly a pretty docile creature. It's considered peaceful and not aggressive in the slightest, and it generally tries to stay away from humans. Yet despite its calm nature, scientists say the freshwater stingray is responsible for more injuries to humans annually than any other freshwater species in the Amazon. So, how is this possible? It's because each stingray has a tail that can reach about 1 foot in length. Because their tails are constantly shedding and being replaced, sometimes they have 2 at the same time. They spend almost all their lives stuck in the muck at the bottom of riverbeds. And so when people are wading through rivers or even just going for a swim to cool down, they frequently step on the stingrays by accident. And when that happens, their tails flick out and they stab into skin with their tipped barbs. The tail of the freshwater stingray is no joke. When the barb is withdrawn, it rips the flesh apart. Plus, there are small grooves underneath the barb which release protein venom. It's not generally enough to kill, but it can cause excruciating pain and misery. Thanks for watching! Which of these freaky river monsters would you least want to meet out in the wild? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!